Hey, Slumpbusters, it's time for episode 100 of the Slumpbuster podcast. I'm your host, Ju-Ju Sports, and my guest today is going to be my OG co-host, MMA Dre, Audre Huynh. Obviously, it's the 100th episode. It's the century mark. I got to bring back the classics. I got to bring back the people who have made this show possible. On today's episode, we talk Conor McGregor, the Lakers' big trade for Westbrook, and a skinny Ben Roethlisberger. But before we do that, folks, it's time to give a shout out to our partner, Caveman Coffee Co. Caveman is a fantastic single source, single origin goodness from a company with impeccable taste and ethics. The people behind it are beautiful souls, and the coffee is delicious fuel for the never-ending quest to do better, be better, love harder, and enjoy deeper. Guys, I tell you, their Nitro Cold Brew is the perfect blend of energy and refreshment in the morning. Great way to start the day. But why stop there? They have their Mammoth blends, which I highly encourage you getting. They have their hibiscus teas, which are delicious. And guys, if you use our promo code SLUMP, you get 15% off your next purchase of any of these fantastic products. cavemancoffeeco.com, promo code SLUMP. Guys, don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP and get yourself a case today. All right, guys, it's time for the podcast. Episode 100, Ju-Ju Sports, MMA Dre. Let's get it. Let's bust the slump and let's enjoy. Welcome in, Slumpbusters. We are finally here. Triple digits, episode 100. Very special episode because it's not just episode 100. It's also a 2-year anniversary. The logical choice for my guest today is Audre Huynh, MMA Dre, my OG co-host, the guy who kind of gave me the confidence to really get this thing started, and couldn't do it without you, man. So welcome on. Welcome back.
Yeah, what's up, Ju-Ju? Thanks for having me back. And so I'm super excited to be back on the pod. Of course, not permanently, but whenever I can be a guest, I'm always excited to be back on. And you know, congrats to you and good luck with your future endeavors. It's exciting to hear that, you know, you've decided to, hey, you're going to quit your job and pursue this as much as you can. And that's awesome. I think it's super important, especially, you know, do you want to work to make a living? And are you working so hard that you forget to have your life, or can you mix the two? And you know, it's something you enjoy and make your living off it. So I'm super proud of you. And like I said, glad to be back on the pod.
Well, you said a quote a couple weeks ago whenever I was visiting town that really kind of like stood with me and really kind of like registered in my brain, but that you'll never really get what you put into any job, you know, and to continue doing it and working at that pace while knowing it wasn't really my passion was something that it's just registered with me, and a compilation of events too that have led up to this moment, finally having the confidence to say, this is what I want to do. And I know a couple years ago, like what'd you first think whenever I like even threw the idea, let's buy some mics, let's get this thing going. I know it was kind of more of like a hobby for you where it was like something that I knew like I wanted to really try and go into. Was kind of like that like thing that said, yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, no, like you said, originally for me, it was just like, oh, it'll be a cool hobby. You know, you and I, we grew up at least from high school together. So I was like, it'll be a fun way to keep in touch with Ju-Ju. Who knows if we'll get any viewers or subscribers or listeners. But what really started doing it for me is we got some really cool guests that were interested, and especially the point where they started reaching out to us. So at the start of any podcast, you have to reach out to the guest and, hey, can we talk to you? Would you mind coming on? But by the end of our first year, we started getting some really impressive guests that would, you know, offer to come on our show. We didn't even have to reach out to them. And it was just cool hearing different people's experiences and perspectives. And one of the things that, you know, I value greatly is, you know, diversity and inclusion. And I know it's a buzzword for some people and they're like, oh, you know, he's just pandering to the left or whatever it is. But I think so many people have like such cool stories to tell. And no matter what your sport is, what your background is, whether you're male, female, transgender, whatever it is, white, black, Asian, like there's so many cool stories. And I think sports has all of it. And like I said, it's regardless of sports. So there's cool athletes that have amazing stories to tell in football, basketball, table tennis, right? Some ping pong world champions out there, I'm sure have cool stories. So that's what I've really enjoyed. And so I'm glad that you're able to run with it, Ju-Ju.
So you're saying I got to drop in the DMs of a tennis table champion. That's the next mission. That's the next big episode.
I'm just saying, we've got the Olympics going on, and there are some impressive freaking ping pong players out there. Like, they move so fast. I can barely hit the ball like one time, and they're just balling it back and forth. So it's sick. I actually do enjoy watching it whenever it is on the Olympics.
All the events that managed to make it to the Olympics, now you see skateboarding as one of the biggest Olympic events out there, which basically just completely destroys the X Games. Who wants an X Games trophy when you have the potential to get a gold medal? Am I right?
Yeah, and Sarah and I, we were actually talking about this, and we were saying it's gotta be somewhat disappointing for like some of the legends that we grew up with. I mean, they made Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, but he never had the chance at getting Olympics, you know. But at the same time, I'm sure that he and a lot of the other skateboarders that came before, I'm sure they're happy to see, you know, that their sport has grown from just a maybe counterculture, you know, type thing, or like, oh, that's just for emo middle schoolers and high schoolers, to now it's like getting the recognition that it deserves. And it truly is a difficult sport. And I mean, even watching this first round of skateboarding, there's so many guys that are falling off the board just doing a simple, you know, grind or no slide or whatever the heck they call it. And you see just how difficult it is to be able to repeat a good run at skateboarding.
It's certainly difficult to do anything in the Olympics. It's difficult for Team USA men's basketball to win in the Olympics, as we've found out.
Much harder than apparently I thought that it was. I thought it was almost guaranteed year after year, but we're not as automatic as we think.
When you see the names on that list and you're saying we're struggling, we're losing Nigeria, we're losing Australia, we're losing to France, those cowards, we're losing to the French. Are you kidding me? Come on. I know we have listeners in France, so this is probably not going to age well with you, but hey, you know, we appreciate you, but you should not beat us in basketball. That is just not a thing that should register. When we have Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Damian Lillard, you name it, and your best player is Rudy Gobert, who is a top 25 player, but that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, if anything, props to France and them as a country. I think what I'm starting to realize and starting to notice, at least about USA basketball, is I think here in America, we emphasize sometimes, I don't want to say they're the wrong values, because they've gotten a lot of people very far and it's made them very successful. So if you think about it, every kid in America wants to be like a Steph Curry, where, you know, Steph is an amazing point guard, but what he's most known for is like his ISO threes, right? Like he can shoot from, you know, 60 feet away from a basket, you know, do an ISO, you know, pull up three from that far out. And that's what Americans like. Or, you know, we love seeing guys like Kevin Durant or whatever that just do it all themselves and can pull up from anywhere and take that shot and, you know, sink it right in your face. And so I think we're emphasizing so much, hey, you need to be like a good one-on-one player, you need to be a star player, that we de-emphasize some of the fundamentals of like ball movement and getting everybody involved and making the right play, you know. And it's a shame, because you even see guys like LeBron James get beat up for it. You know, Skip Bayless, who Skip, I think is sometimes just to troll LeBron James, right? And I think everybody knows it, and it makes for good entertainment. But there's some people that truly beat up on LeBron James, even though he usually makes the right play, even if it means he passes up on that final shot. But then, you know, like I said, here in America, we beat up on guys like that, and we're like, no, you need to take the final shot. You need to be, you know, like Kobe gets glorified, and I love Kobe, you know, rest in peace. Michael Jordan, all those guys are, you know, all right, I'm going to be the one to take the final shot. But then when you have a team of 5 guys like that on the court, you're not playing the best form of basketball. You're playing the best form of basketball for each individual. And collectively as a team, which is, you know, how you have to win, it doesn't come out well. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably I agree with the team aspect of it, but I would say that even if they are playing ISO ball, even if it is just individual one-on-one performances out there, 5 individual one-on-one performances each given night, those 5 players are still individually better than each of that group. So I'm just saying, if Kevin Durant is failing to put up more than 20 points in a given matchup, that is a huge problem for historically the greatest scorer that we've ever seen, right? Easy money sniper. I'm just saying, you mentioned Skip Bayless. Skip has been hyping this one up. Not a great moment for Kevin Durant, like in terms of taking over Team USA basketball. But you did mention LeBron. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you are a Lakers fan. Leads into one of the first big subjects of the day. Big breaking news. LeBron has a new teammate. I don't know if it's the best schematic fit, but he does have a new teammate. Russell Westbrook is going over to Los Angeles in a trade from the Washington Wizards. The Wizards in return will get Montrezl Harrell and Kyle Kuzma. So Kyle Kuzma has been involved in like 20 different trade situations over the last week, and we have finally resolution of where he's going. And Russ, third team in 3 years, actually might even be, fourth team in 4 years, right?
OKC, Rockets,
Houston, Washington.
Wizards.
Now he's going to be with the Lakers. That's incredible for a former MVP to be on the move so often. But here we are. Again, Russell Westbrook, new home. It doesn't sound like a great fit on paper, but how are you feeling about Russ being out with the Lakers?
No, I agree, and I'm probably a little bit more hesitant than most Laker fans. Laker fans tend to be incredibly fanatic, right? And they're like, my team can never do wrong. Everything is amazing for my team. And that's a part of being a fan is you want to be optimistic and you want to be on the bright side of everything. And when you put three superstars together, it seems like it'll be a good thing. But where my hesitation comes in is, like you said, like schematically, you have AD and LeBron, who both of them scored the majority of their points in the paint. That's just facts. AD, I think, was at or below average literally everywhere else on the court. Even mid-range, he was below average. Threes, he was below average. So he was just most efficient in the paint, and that's where he got most of his points. Same with LeBron. LeBron is average, I think, at beyond the arc, but mid-range, like LeBron, below average, except for like once you get to the paint, then LeBron is above average. And if you look at Russell Westbrook, he's the exact same. Like he's at or below average from three. His mid-range game is okay. He might be average there, but where he thrives is in the paint and getting those layups and stuff like that. And so my worry is that they're all too similar when it comes to scoring. And so what you're ultimately doing now is just taking away from somebody's points in the paint and giving it to another one of the superstars without adding anything extra. That's really where my big concern is, especially when we sort of know what the winning formula is with LeBron, as you typically need floor spacing. Now, I will say the championship we won with Anthony Davis did break that formula a little bit, but it was also kind of a weird year with COVID. And when you have like two superstars that are that good, right, it just overrides almost everything. But having a third in there, like you could try to say like, hey, there's just so much talent. Yeah, it beats everything anyways. But I just don't see it working.
One thing the Westbrook is going to provide is that aggressiveness, that athleticism, better defense than they could have got from other potential trade names that were being thrown around there. Of course, Damian Lillard was a popular choice by a lot of Lakers fans and would probably been at the top of a wish list. Bradley Beal, of course, his former teammate in Washington, would have also been a perceived upgrade by most Lakers fans. The problem is, as you mentioned, it just, you look at the construct of this team, and this may be a more casual take. I know people push back against the casuals here, but whenever you think about the idea of a couple guys in LeBron and Westbrook who both play that similar style of I want to drive and kick, I want to drive in the paint to the bucket, that does, like you said, create a little bit of a logjam. It does put some pressure on Anthony Davis to maybe swing outside occasionally more often than you would like him to. And one of his biggest strengths is that he can shoot from behind the arc. He is one of the more modern day big men in that regard. But you don't want to rely on that. You don't want to make that a big part of the game plan. I'm sure Frank Vogel doesn't really like the idea of doing that either. There's still a lot of offseason to go here. Obviously, free agency hasn't started, so they can still make some more moves to build this roster out a little bit. But there's not abundance of elite shooters out there on the market to kind of supplement for these guys' lack of ability from beyond the arc. And I do think that is a little bit worrisome when you think about the Lakers' chances compared to the rest of the West. Does it really fit? And then, of course, too, the biggest factor that this team faces and was the biggest factor in the 2021 season, health. What are we going to get from LeBron James in his late 30s? What are we going to get from Anthony Davis in his 20s? He's still struggled to stay healthy and on the court. I think that's why a lot of people have put him in trade discussions. Similar to a Niners with a Jimmy Garoppolo, when you have a guy that just can't stay healthy, it doesn't matter how talented he is. Your greatest ability is availability. And if he's not out there on the court next to LeBron James, then that just makes that entire trade, all those assets, all those young players that they gave up from the Lakers, worthless. And I do think that is one of the biggest things that Jeannie Buss, the management has had to cope with, given that they traded so much to get AD. Is there a potential move that you're thinking the Lakers could do that would make you satisfied completely with the offseason and feel good about your chances? We've heard names like DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry thrown around for a potential Raptors reunion in Los Angeles. What about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we necessarily need those two. It would be nice to have like a good, floor spacing guard, shooting guard specifically. But we don't really have cap space, and I just don't see any other trades really working out. Real quick though, before I finish up on, the off season, what else I think we could do, going back to your point on injuries, here's actually where I think there might be a bright spot with this, and the way that things might work out altogether is the fact that we've seen, 2 years, 3 years in a row now where LeBron has had to deal with injuries more so than he ever has before. If you remember, the first year that LeBron was in LA, they were in the 4th seed, and then LeBron got hurt, and that's when we fell out of the playoffs. Even the year that we did win the championship, LeBron was in and out. Sometimes, he was definitely more consistent and healthy. AD was more consistent and healthy that year that we won the championship. But then this last season, both of them would be in or out, just depending on the time. And AD especially was hurt a lot more this season than this previous season before that. And so what I think is nice is Russ provides some consistency night over night. He's not known for getting injured, and he's known for just being tough and playing through things anyways. And there's the chance that maybe AD and Braun aren't always on the court anyways. So if AD does go out for a week, we at least still have 2 superstars. And I think we could still make it work with just Russ and just LeBron. Or if LeBron, goes out for an extended period of time, all right, now we just have to figure out how to make it work with Russ and AD. And so that's where I do see the bright spot, is the fact that AD's health is always a question, and LeBron has gotten hurt more, in the past few years than he has in his entire career. And so how likely is it that we'll have to put all 3 of them on a court, for the entire season? I think it's probably, very unlikely that they'll play, obviously every single game together. But there might even be stretches, like I said, where we only have 2. And I think the chemistry between 2 out of the 3 can be really good, depending on the other pieces that we surround them. So that's where I do see sort of a bright spot, is the consistency that we will get from Westbrook, is that we'll at least always probably have 2 out of the 3 playing in pretty much every single game, barring, of course, season-ending injuries.
For all his flaws, Westbrook has gotten his teams to the playoffs consistently over the last few years. And if you could get to the playoffs with LeBron James on your team, anything can happen. I think the biggest challenge is going to be, of course, that Western Conference is always fierce competition. We don't know what's going to happen yet with Chris Paul, but assuming he goes back to the Phoenix Suns, that team obviously showed that they are going to be a force to be reckoned with for some time now, as long as they get consistent play out of that point guard position. The only concern I would say for them is the Lakers did look like they were going to win that series before Anthony Davis got hurt. So the Lakers, when healthy, are perhaps a better team than the Phoenix Suns when you equal out the team from last year to this year. Moving forward too, you have to assume with Jamal Murray hopefully back for the Denver Nuggets, they're going to be competitive. The Utah Jazz, a lot of people in that organization are probably frustrated with how that series turned out with the Clippers. They looked like they were going to win. Kawhi Leonard gets hurt, and they still can't pull it down and make it to the Western Conference Finals. Definitely a lot of disappointment there, but you look at Donovan Mitchell's ascension, Rudy Gobert, again, for getting a little bit exposed. He still is an elite defender. I mean, heck, again, we just started the show talking about Team USA. He's doing great stuff for France. You can't underrate how good Rudy Gobert is defensively. Again, going down the list. So Luka, we don't know what the Mavericks are going to do. The Mavericks could get a whole lot better this season. Luka's development is one of the biggest stories in the NBA currently. And then the Clippers are a little bit in dysfunction. They saw that they could win without Kawhi Leonard on the court. Paul George actually did play really well for them in the playoffs when Kawhi got hurt. But they do need 2 superstars, and if Kawhi Leonard decides not to return to them, that could just cause a domino effect that leads to the Clippers to be more of the 6 to 7, 8 seeds somewhere in the West. And then there's the big matchup, the one that all Lakers fans really are looking forward to, the possibility of the Brooklyn Nets in the finals if all 3 of those guys stay healthy. Fun storyline, Kyrie versus LeBron, Westbrook versus KD in a finals.
Yep. And Harden.
And Harden just kind of being
So
there, being fat.
yeah, the other thing, the
Does he
other
have
team that
beef
you,
with AD? I guess we can
I don't,
manufacture that.
I'm sure they'll make it a storyline. The other team you forgot too is Golden State. I don't think Golden State's going to be slouches either. They're getting their whole team back. Probably not as athletic and as explosive as they were a few years ago, but you don't necessarily need that when you've got the shooting prowess of Steph and Clay. So I think they'll still be tough. Like you said, that Nets matchup will be amazing. So that's Sarah's dad's favorite team at the moment. He's from New York,
Oh,
so
what a
he jumped ship.
bandwagoner. What a
Yeah, jump ship from the
bandwagoner.
Knicks, but hey, it'll be an exciting matchup. And so, no, you're exactly right. I don't think it'll be a cakewalk, but just the level of talent that they've got, it's going to be hard to beat the Lakers. And even last season, like you said, before AD going down, I actually had the Lakers beating the Suns, and I thought they would gentlemen sweep them. I thought Suns will get one game, and that'll be it. Unfortunately, AD went out, and we all know what
All bets
happened.
were off.
All bets were off. I think when it does come back to your first question though about like what else can they do in the off season, I really think it's going to be, I think Dennis Schroeder, I've heard that Lakers have the rights to do sign and trade. So if they could do sign and trade, get another like good key piece to make like a good fourth player, then even a fifth player is less important at that point, right? And we could do veteran minimums from there on out, which is exactly what I'm thinking they'll probably do. I'd like to keep Talen Horton-Tucker, THT. He's a good player. I think he had definitely signs of life in him last season, and he was looking good when we needed him in a pinch. So I'm really just thinking like it's gonna be about like what can you get on the margins, and what players are still out there willing to sign veteran minimums. There's a lot of other big names like you mentioned, DeRozan's and Lowry's, and obviously Bradley Beal won't come because he's staying with the Wizards probably. Buddy Hield was another name that was linked, but we're not going to be able to get any of those other guys, I don't think. And even another, top tier, second tier player, I don't think we'll get. It's really going to be, can we find good veterans that can help us space the floor that are not going to come at a premium and they're willing to take a veteran minimum?
Here's going to be the beef. AD, James Harden, brow versus beard. Who has the most iconic facial hair? That is the beef right there. That's what's going to be put on the matchup card.
That is a good beef. Did you hear that they're changing the rule too for Harden that you can't lean into somebody to get a foul?
How is he going to score? How's
That's
the
it.
most
That's exactly
dynamic
what I
scorer
thought.
going to score? No, I'm kidding. He's still going to be good, but definitely does take away one of his biggest assets in his game. That was getting ridiculous. I think most people who have followed the NBA, like, how is this a foul? Some stupid stuff with the leg push outs and stuff like that was just getting called fouls. It's terrible,
No,
terrible
I agree.
officiating.
And a lot of times they weren't even actually trying to make the three. It was, let me just get in the air so I can get 3 free throws, and kick my legs forward or jump into somebody and get my 3 free throws. And
Hey,
so,
I love Marcus Smart, but for all the
mhm.
much I love Marcus, yeah, he's one of the biggest offenders of that too.
No, I think it makes the game much more exciting actually seeing guys want to, actually score and not just get fouls the entire time.
Yeah. Well, we would be remiss. Obviously, we branded you MMA Dre,
Hmm.
our MMA expert. So if we didn't get opinion on what transpired a couple weeks ago on Conor McGregor, it would be a big mistake. We haven't even talked about it yet on this channel, obviously, because there's been such a void in our life from not having you on the channel, man. So, Connor, are people mistaken to say he's done after that fight? Because I think it's a freak injury, but I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I've actually thought he's been done probably since the Khabib fight. If I'm being honest, from a mental standpoint, I think he's been done ever since then. The Nate Diaz stuff, I did think a lot of it sort of got handed to him, especially in the rematch. Like, I don't think he looked that great in the rematch, but it was, like, I just think stuff gets served to Connor on a silver platter. And there's something to be said about that when, you've got a business to run, and that's what Dana White's doing. He's running his business, he's making money. And if you've got a cash cow, you continue to feed that cash cow. But ever since then, Connor's gone off and, he's explored his whiskey business. He's getting fights at bars because old men tell him his whiskey's trash. I mean, he's smashing buses. And to me personally, I just don't think his heart's really been in it. And if you take a look at, even his recent victory, I think the last one was over Donald Cerrone, and everybody knows that Cowboy's sort of over the hill too, and probably needs to retire. He was even on a little bit of a skid before the Conor fight, let alone after the Conor fight. And so when your only win in, the past few years, I think it's actually been like 5 years since he notched a win, has been over a perennial gatekeeper in Cowboy Cerrone. And I love Cowboy. It's not a knock at him. He just never won the championship, and he was never good enough to win the championship. But he was always good enough to be, top 5. And so when you beat somebody that's always a gatekeeper, never championship level, and that's your only win in the past 5 years, to me, like, it's hard to say that, no, you're not done. And I think that the game has passed him up. At a smaller weight class, back when Conor was at 145, he had such tremendous power on the feet. He used some really interesting, funky movement and motion on his feet that in some ways it almost mesmerized his opponents. And he was able to put it together with his reach and his power and dominate down at a lower weight class. Now that he's gone up, 155 and above, he doesn't have that reach advantage that he normally does. And his power is maybe comparable to everybody else. And when your power is comparable to everybody else, you're at a bigger weight class, you don't have a reach advantage. That means your skills have to be better than everybody else. And you can make the argument that, yeah, on feet, he might still be better than a lot of fighters, but it's MMA and it's well-rounded. And so you've got to worry about takedowns, takedown defense, grappling on the mat. And so I think that just everybody else has sort of just transcended his skills and his talent. And I just don't think he has the drive anymore to get better, to be able to stay at the top tier. And so I think he's still probably a good fighter. I think he'll recover. He might come back and get another win, but will he be a champion again? I don't think so.
I think, though, that you're kind of underrating him in this sense. Just because to say that he doesn't have that mental drive, I kind of don't believe you in this respect. The guy has been printing money for years. He is far and away the highest paid fighter in the UFC. And yet he's still taking the chance and the opportunity to go out there and accept a big money fight. And not a lot of people would still do that. Obviously, when you talk about a killer like Dustin Poirier across from you, it's not something that I think too many people who are satisfied and content would do. So I do think that fighter spirit is still in Conor. And when it comes to the fight against Dustin itself, he did make a mistake. He tried to grapple. That is obviously not Conor's strong suit. When he went for that guillotine, it was clear that Dustin had the advantage there, was able to work his way out, and then just punished him with those just brutal elbow shots. But even then, Conor still got his licks in too. He was able to get a really strong kick going on from guard. And I do think that had that fight played out a little bit more, we could have seen some more adjustments, some more gamesmanship as Conor was starting to fill out that fight. It's a shame. I feel we got robbed of the rest of that fight. And I do think that it could have been one of the better fights of the last couple of years, especially for Conor, especially for Dustin, had it not ended in the fashion it did. Are you excited at all for the potential of Dustin versus Conor 4?
Yeah, so I guess let me counter a few things that you said. And so here's why I still also think that he doesn't have the drive or the passion that he normally does. And I think, to articulate this, I think Conor thought Dustin 2 was going to be an easy win. And that's why I think Conor was willing to take that fight. Because Conor, he got starched against Khabib. And if anybody can get like an instant rematch, it probably would have been McGregor. I know that there was things going on with Khabib's father dying and things like that. And so it never happened. But you never see Conor, when he gets completely dominated like that, you never see him ask for a rematch. He asked for a rematch with Dustin, in my opinion, because Dustin was on the rise. So Dustin had a few good wins. And so Conor thought, hey, this will probably go like the first match or the first fight, and I can still say that, yeah, I've still got it because Dustin's been going up, up the ranks of lightweight. That didn't happen in the first fight. And then I think, of course, there's always big money when it comes to rubber matches. So there's always big money. Like, think about the Nate Diaz loss that McGregor had. Everybody, I think, would still pay a whole lot of money to see, Diaz and McGregor 3 just because it's a rubber match. And I think it was the same thing. It's like, oh, now it's 1-1. You know, Dustin has one, Conor has one. Yeah, we want to see 3. But in my opinion, I just thought like Dustin just dominated from start to finish. And people were saying like, oh, he got a few good looks in. In my opinion, the only reason that McGregor went for a takedown is I think he was gassed. I've never seen McGregor go for a takedown. And logically, I don't understand why McGregor would even try to take down a BJJ black belt when McGregor knows that, you know, it's not a strong suit. And maybe you could just say like his camp is just running out of ideas, or like that was a stupid call on his camp's part. Maybe I think Kavanaugh is his coach's name. Maybe Kavanaugh was telling him, hey, go for a takedown, try to mix it up and surprise him and catch Poirier off guard. But it's almost more dangerous to have a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt on their back than, you know, it is to be underneath them. And so just to me, like, I just don't understand. Like, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was out of desperation. And a lot of it is you can tell that McGregor gets gas still, you know, come first, second round. And so the game plan to beat McGregor is pretty simple. You make sure that you can make it out of the first and second round, you know, just don't get knocked out within that time. And if you can take him down, burn out all his energy. You'll get either a tap, or come third round, you knock him out or get close to it to the point where you can get him on the ground anyways. Again, I don't know if McGregor has the heart that he once did, especially like seeing him get gassed that early and, like I said, get desperate that early. And no, I don't look forward to a Dustin and Conor 4, just because I think Poirier has passed him. And I think if we run this fight 100 times, I think Dustin wins 99 out of those 100 times from here on out.
99 out of 100. You're
I
willing to
think
make
so.
that bet, huh?
I think so. I honestly am. Like, I think Dustin has passed him. Now, granted, Connor still has power. Like I said, everybody always has a puncher's chance, but I don't think Connor's power has increased that much from when he was down at flyweight to where he's at now at lightweight. But I think Poirier being up a little bit more and cutting less now has more stability and a better chin. Because when you do that, you're more hydrated. You know, you've just got more fluid in your brain, literally, right? You've got more water in your brain. You can bulk up a little bit and strengthen, you know, the muscles in your neck are what help stabilize your chin a little bit more, and your shoulders and all that. And so I think Dustin can now hang with the power of a lot of the lightweights, including McGregor, but like McGregor just doesn't have as much. And like I said, I just don't think McGregor has the heart anymore.
I don't know. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Dustin Poirier would be the favorite in this next matchup. They said it's pretty much as done a deal can be. However, to say he doesn't have a heart, man, the guy had a broken leg, and you could say it's just showmanship here, but the guy's yelling at Poirier, yelling at anyone that will listen. Your wife's in my DMs, all this stuff. And I just feel as though the guy's got balls, man. At the base minimum, the guy's got balls. And I think that counts for something. That tells me that he still wants to be in that octagon, and he doesn't have to be.
I don't know. I don't know if it's so much ball. Part of it could have just been him trying to spare the embarrassment. Like, I think he literally got embarrassed in the octagon, and Connor fans will say no, and they'll just be like, "Hey, what can you do about a broken leg that snapped?"
I
Like,
mean,
I
what
think
can you do about a broken leg, though?
it is true, like 100%. Like, I can't deny that, and I hope McGregor's doing well. So I don't want anybody to take this as like me wishing poorly on McGregor, because I'm not. I would never wish poorly on any athlete. But I think like where I noticed in the fight is, like I said, Poirier was getting probably the better part of most of the exchanges. McGregor definitely got some good hits in there, but McGregor had to resort to something completely out of his wheelhouse, out of his game plan, by trying to grapple, which he's never done. He had poor submissions, and at one point, some of us were like, "Oh man, maybe he does have Poirier." But I don't think so. I don't think Poirier ever at once was concerned about the guillotine. And then McGregor had to resort to some cheap tricks too, of pulling the gloves when you were doing up kicks. And maybe you could say, hey, that was just a matter of like he tried to hold on to the wrist and his hand accidentally slipped and opened, right? Because I understand that as somebody that's done, you know, combat sports, things get slippery, your hand opens and you just get caught or something. But you know, I think McGregor was trying to hold on to, you know, do cheap tricks. He's done things like that in the past where he punches fighters in the back of the head and stuff like that. And so like I think all of it together, seeing Conor go with, you know, a game plan out of desperation, seeing him do some of the cheap stuff on the ground by holding the gloves, I just don't think McGregor has really anything to offer, even to most of the top 5 guys at lightweight. I think they all beat him.
Fair enough. I mean, what's going to be unique to see next is going to be Dustin's ascension. Obviously, he's going for that title. That's his next fight. Going to take Conor at least a year plus to recover from that brutal of an injury there. So what do you think of Dustin Poirier going for the championship? Do you think they have any potential of bringing Khabib out of retirement for that one? I know he's already beaten Poirier, so there is also that. It would be a rematch.
Yeah, so I don't think that Khabib comes out of retirement. I think Khabib truly is done. And the reason why I say that is Khabib is different. He's not, I don't think he was ever necessarily fighting to make money, especially in Russia. If you're like in combat sports or like really any sport and you're a world champion, like you're set for life. And people don't understand that about Russia. Like Khabib will get a job like with the KGB if he has to, and Putin will set him up. Like that's just the way it is for Olympic gold, wrestlers, for MMA fighters that do well, they're set. And so Khabib, I don't think that was his motivating factor. You see a lot of these guys that come out of retirement, it's usually because they go broke, right? Hey, I'm strapped for cash. Sometimes they just get the itch and they're like, hey, I want to get back in there. I've missed this. But a lot of times it's because they've hit rock bottom or they're broke or something. And they're like, I need to step back in. I don't think Khabib's going to do that. I also don't think Khabib will ever get that itch because it's something like, I think, a special bond that him and his dad shared. And since the passing of his dad, I think he had the motivation of, I want to get my one last win to show my dad, like make my dad proud up there in heaven. But after that, like he's got nothing else to prove. He went undefeated. He cleaned out the entire lightweight division. I would have liked to have seen him fight Michael Chandler. That would have been an interesting one. But timing didn't work out with, getting Chandler from another organization into the UFC. With all of that being said, like I think Khabib's moved on to like, hey, I just want to be a businessman in Russia. He's got his own fight league that he runs. He does some coaching, all that stuff. I think he's just chill. As far as Poirier, though, challenging for the belt, I think he's definitely earned it. I think he has a very good shot at it. I think Oliveira's smoother, in my opinion, and a better technician, and that might be where he can beat Poirier. But I've heard a lot of people that say, hey, we think Poirier is the true number one, and maybe it happens. So I'm kind of 50-50 on this. I'm leaning still a little bit Oliveira. I just see like a lot of really, really great technical things from Oliveira, but you never know. And I'm, like I said, happy for Poirier to get that championship, at least the opportunity to fight for it.
Do you at least give Conor favorability against Jake Paul? Come on, man.
Okay, Jake Paul, absolutely. Like if that's a fight that does materialize, I not only give Conor, the favorite in that. I actually wouldn't mind seeing Conor win. I am not a particular, Jake
who do you
Paul
hate
fan.
more?
Exactly. It's who do you hate more? And at least Conor is a true combat sports athlete. And as much as I think he runs his mouth too much, he does sell pay-per-views. It's always exciting to watch Conor. And so I think he ends up winning that Jake Paul fight.
What do you think of Jake Paul sending over Poirier the sleepy Conor necklace with the caption, should I break the ankle off or you got this one?
So I thought the Sleepy Connor, that necklace was a funny necklace. I like it. I just thought it was a little tasteless after Connor breaking his. I never wish bad on any athlete as much as I might hate them. And seeing that Connor broke his leg and that's how the fight ended, I did think that was a little bit poor in taste. But, you get funny jabs. And that's what happens when you're Connor, though, right? Is like Connor's always taking funny jabs at people, regardless of their situation, regardless of their health. And like Poirier said, karma's a mirror, and that's sort of what I think ultimately happened is now people make jokes at the expense of McGregor.
Yeah, I think what Conor really did with his post-fight interview is save himself from being a forever meme in the same way Anderson Silva never escaped his leg-breaking incident. Still gets the SpongeBob, my leg meme every now and then. I think at least Conor, you're right, did save a little face there. Jake Paul going against Tyron Woodley, though, here in a few weeks. What do you think of that one?
Yeah.
I mean, Woodley's been kind of, he was struggling in the UFC down the stretch there. So a boxing match, that's certainly a change of pace for him.
Yeah, no, that one's going to be interesting. So I knew that Ben Askren would suck in that fight because Ben Askren is the worst striker in history. Like
he looked like he just showed up that day. He didn't, not even in shape, no muscle definition. He looked worse than me without his shirt on.
No, it was awful. And his striking style is pure garbage. Like I was talking to one of my friends, Andrew, about this, and Andrew was like, who do you got winning? And I was like, I think I've got Paul. And he's like, why? He's like, Ben Askren was, a D1 champion, wrestled in the Olympics, all this stuff. And I was like, have you seen Ben Askren's boxing? Like, it is garbage. It is trash. And the only reason why he was even a good MMA fighter is because they have submissions. Like, he was getting wrecked by Robbie Lawler until he fell into that bulldog choke. And no, Robbie Lawler, I don't think was getting out of that bulldog choke at any point anyways. But like, if it wasn't for grappling, there's no way Askren could ever transition into combat sports. Why I bring that up though is I don't think Woodley is like that. So Askren, the way that he got to be a D1 champion and even Olympian is because he does really funky, weird things that at that time nobody else was doing. And so nobody really knew how to compete with the funk of Askren at, the D1 and Olympic levels. But now we have such good athletes that are competing in the Olympics for wrestling, such good athletes that are, competing in D1, NCAA wrestling championships, that I personally don't know if Askren would be a champion today. And in fact, I don't think that he would. Whereas Woodley is a good athlete. Like, the reason he was good at wrestling is because he's a freak of nature athlete. The reason why he was, a champion in the UFC is because he was a freak of nature athlete, and you combine that with his ability to strike and things like that. And so I would give the edge to Woodley. I think he's got more power. I think he is a better athlete. He's had more actual fighting experience, because Paul really has only ever fought basically bums off the street.
Nate Robinson and, of course, Ben
Ben
Askren.
Askren, like, and that's it. And we know, like I said, Askren doesn't have any like striking skill, and Nate Robinson was just a good basketball player.
Yeah, if it was a slam dunk contest, yeah, Jake Paul would be in trouble there. But yeah, what is it? You can't fake boxing. You can't play boxing. That's not how that works. Listen, I'll say this for the Paul brothers. I do think that they are real boxers. And what I mean in that, not saying that they're the elite boxers. Not saying they're Floyd Mayweather, even though I guess technically that fight happened, or Muhammad Ali, but they are in fact real boxers. Like, their technique, the guy does have a good finishing blow. His knockout punch is legit. So heck, if he catches Woodley with one of those, it could be lights out. These guys are athletes as well, in a certain amount of respect. There may be some questions of juicy juice going on there, but still, they are athletes. Woodley, though, you mentioned, he's a fighter, he's a striker, he's a way better athlete than Ben Askren could ever dream to be. Given those factors, he should be able to beat Jake Paul in this fight. However, anything can happen. And, he just got to guard his chin, because it just takes one of those blows. It really does. With how much power Jake Paul is actually able to generate, it could just take one. So I'm sure Woodley's going to take the fight seriously. That's going to be his biggest advantage in this one. I don't think Askren ever took it seriously. Again, he literally looked like he just showed up. You would expect some sort of training program. Nothing.
Yeah. And the other thing that I will say that, you sort of mentioned, where I might give Jake Paul a little bit of an edge, is that striking in boxing truly is different from MMA, because MMA, you're so worried about kicks and knees and elbows and punches and everything flying from everywhere, takedowns, that you are a little bit more hesitant. And if you've ever watched a Woodley fight, like, Dana White bashed Woodley all the time because he's like, Woodley fights so slow and methodical, and he's picking his opportunity and picking his chance to strike, and guys wouldn't want to close that distance. They wouldn't want to close that gap, because they knew that, okay, one punch from Woodley could put me out, or there's takedowns coming and all that. So a lot of Woodley's MMA fights were super slow, really measured, waiting for the right opportunity. Boxing matches aren't really like that, because they rely just more on like head movement. That they're going to be striking, you've really only got two ways that it's coming. It's either coming from the left or coming from the right. And granted, there's different angles, uppercuts, hooks, things like that, to the body, to the head. But there's really only, like I said, two ways that it's coming. It's either going to be left or it's going to be right. And so with boxing matches, I think Jake Paul has gotten used to the pace of boxing, and I don't know if Woodley has when it comes to being a striker. Like I said, Woodley, for a lot of times, he's been able to slow down the pace in striking in MMA. Can you do that in a boxing match? I don't know. And that is the one area where I will say that maybe Paul has some favorability right there.
I mean, he did look pretty bad in his last few fights. I remember watching some of his most recents, and they were rough watches. You talk about that slow, methodical pace. He just never got it going in those fights at any point. It was just like, okay, dude, the fight started like a couple rounds ago. Let's get into this. And you kind of understand Dana White's frustrations a little bit. Okay, Dre. Well, we've talked about people being done. We've talked about people coming in good shape and bad shape. That brings me to your football team. We just got a photo from camp of Ben Roethlisberger looking pretty skinny. I gotta look what diet plan he's getting on. Do you think he got on that TB12? Is that what's going on here? Because Big Ben slimming down. He looks like the next Lamar Jackson out of the AFC North. What do you make of I don't know. Can we call him Big Ben anymore? Or is
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
Medium Ben?
Medium Ben.
Slim Ben? Slim Ben? That's what we're going with?
You
Slim
know,
Ben Roethlisberger at age 39,
yeah,
leading the
sounds
Pittsburgh
better.
Steelers to a division title. How about it?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't think like him getting in better shape. I don't know how much it really is going to help. And so you and I, we talked a little bit before the show on this. Is that Big Ben's sort of bread and butter throughout his career has always been, I'll just stand in the pocket and I'll take three guys to take me down just because I'm, Big Ben. I'm gigantic.
No bread and butter though. And it's a no carb diet.
It's a no carb diet. That is true. No potatoes either. That stuff. So for somebody that's relied on that being his style for so long, is it good to change that? At what, he's 39 years old, so his age 39 season. Like, I don't know how effective it's going to be. And yeah, maybe it makes Ben a little bit more mobile, but he's not, like I said, used to playing that style of quarterback. And so somebody that's not used to that style of play, I don't know if it makes them any better. And then you combine that with our line got worse for sure, our offensive line. Like, maybe you can say like, yeah, it'll help him scramble because our line got worse. So at least he'll be able to run away for a little bit. But I just don't know if it's really going to elevate the Steelers play, especially like I said, in Big Ben's age 39 season. I just worry that like, one, he just doesn't have the skill to be able to get us over the hump. The other thing you got to worry about with Ben is like, even at his big size, he was still sort of injury prone. And, he would go 1 year where he would not get injured and play, all 16 games. Now we have an extended season and that he gets injured like all the time. And so having even just that one more game, and he's thinner and smaller, like I just think that it could, actually be a recipe for disaster more than, success. I think there's some bright spots with the Steelers, Najee Harris and all of that. But like I'm happy that football is back. I'll watch. I think we're just at the moment, the way that the team is constructed and the way like that our front office has been operating, we're just sort of perennial gatekeepers. Like, we'll probably make the playoffs and that'll be great. Will we ever make it to the Super Bowl? Probably not at the rate things are going, not until we start seeing probably bigger shakeups.
Wow, you just called your Steelers the Cowboy Cerrone of the NFL, huh?
Basically, that's where we're at right now, and we've had great years. I mean, obviously we got 6 rings, but that's basically what we are. We're perennial gatekeepers at the moment. And like I said, until we shake things up, I can't see us making it back to the championship.
I'm going to give you a fun exercise here.
Okay.
I'm going to go through the teams in your division, and I want you to compare them to a current MMA fighter. Okay, let's start off first with the Bengals.
The Bengals. Oh, man,
they got a young quarterback in Joe Burrow, so they maybe on the rise here. But they've gone through a few rough years, so maybe a learning patch there.
If Burrow hadn't gotten hurt, I would say Brandon Moreno might be too gracious to them, because Moreno, he's the new flyweight champion, and he went through a big rough patch, even got kicked out of the UFC and then got back and then became a champion. So the Bengals aren't technically right there yet because, they've still been pretty bad. And with Burrow getting hurt, who knows what they're going to be like. And so I guess I have to lean with they've just been bad. So if I had to, maybe they're, I don't know, Ju-Ju, who's an MMA fighter that was just bad all around? Maybe they're
bad all around. Ben Askren? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, maybe they're a Ben Askren, right? Like, it's just like they're like, maybe there's some bright spots with Joe Burrow, and you're like, oh, okay, I could maybe.
There's
see
some potential there. I think would be kind of like one of those kind of things that you could throw at them as like an opportunity for them to succeed, maybe in years down the road. So maybe an ascending star. Do you have an ascending star in mind?
An ascending star. It's. Like I said, the only one that I can think of right now is Brandon Moreno, and that's a little bit still too gracious. I think Askren was actually maybe a good one. But even
Okay.
Askren had success in one though, so it's a little bit hard because they like the Bengals have just not been successful.
They
But we'll go
technically
with
been to a
Askren.
couple Super Bowls. They just happen to lose both to the 49ers. So, they've
Yeah,
taken a few flying knees to the face from time to time.
yeah, and
Actually,
then
I
go to
think they
sleep.
actually they literally have though. Think about that. Remember when AB just absolutely demolished that poor guy on that punt return or kick return?
Yeah, just stepped on his face.
Yeah, exactly. Just did a flying Spartan kick to him. Yeah. So
So
technically they have seen a flying leg to the face a couple times. Okay.
yeah, maybe
Fun
Askren's
fact.
more appropriate then.
Maybe that's the case. Okay, so we joked, but Cowboy Cerrone, your Steelers. I mean, I guess
At
aging team, veteran team,
yeah, I think so.
gatekeepers. Okay, that's
I think
that's the
at the
one you can roll with.
I think at this point that's what I would roll with probably.
Okay, let's say the Browns. So bad for years, awful for years, but suddenly they're good again. People are talking about them as a championship level organization. Who fits that mold?
Yeah, no. And maybe they're actually more of the Brandon Morenos. So we said Askren for for the Bengals, and so the Browns might actually fit the Brandon Moreno mold. Because like I said, he had his shot, I think, on the Ultimate Fighter, made it to the UFC, got cut, had to work his way back up, and now like everybody loves him. He just won the championship. He's scrappy. And so I think that would actually probably be a better fit.
Chito Vera, too, also had a pretty rough patch as well in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, is at a championship tier. So, I mean, hey, that's also potentially a comp there.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
let's talk about the last year's division winners then, the Ravens. Or actually, no, they were the wild card. You guys won the division, right?
We won the division and then we sucked after that.
Okay, it just how that season went.
you know,
It feels as though you guys didn't win the division, but you did just because you had that hot start. But okay,
yeah, exactly. Since it's the Slumpbuster, right, and we've got a woman as our logo, I'll just say we blew our load early. That's basically
okay. We busted the slump. All right.
yeah, we
The
busted the
Steelers
slump a
busted the
little
slump
too
there.
early in the
No,
season.
the Steelers went into a slump. That's what really went wrong there.
Yeah,
They
we
needed to
busted
bust the
into the
slump.
slump.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
should have busted around January. That's what should have happened there.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let's see here. The Ravens goes in out there. So smash mouth. This team wants to punch you in the mouth. Uh,
Yeah.
that they're not a lot of finesse, not a lot of skill going on, just power. What do you think of this team here? What's that comp for the Ravens?
Yeah, so this one it might be
Always comes
like
up short too.
yeah, they do always come up short. I'm thinking it's hard to say. Maybe like a Forrest Griffin. I know that's sort of a
Okay.
throwback and it's not current, but like Forrest Griffin, he actually did win the championship, and the Ravens have a few championships. But you knew that Forrest Griffin was always going to be exciting. He was always going to be scrappy. The game passed him up though. Like there was better technicians that eventually came around and all that. But like you were always going to tune into a Forrest Griffin fight. Like you always knew, like I said, he was going to scrap. And I think it's the same with the Ravens. They could be the worst team on paper and they will still show up and you know that it's going to be a scrappy football game.
It was actually a fun exercise. Just kind of thought of that on the fly. It works.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do that some more. Maybe I'll go
Expand it
through
out
and
to all 30 teams,
all
right?
32 teams. Yeah,
Drop
I
that
think
in the
that'd be fun.
comments below. If you like that segment, definitely drop that in the comments below. I want to know if we can flesh this one out a little bit. That was just ad-libbing purely. Okay, well, listen. So, I mean, the team, the Steelers as a whole, I did like the Najee Harris pickup. I think that was very good for the team. You can expect Devin Bush is going to be back. He did lose Bud Dupree in free agency. And you did mention the losses on the offensive line between DeCastro and Pouncey retiring. A lot of turnover for the Steelers, but in general, having the consistency of Mike Tomlin and for all his faults, a Hall of Fame quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, I think that will keep the Steelers viable. I will never look at the Steelers and think this is a 7-9 team or I guess 7-10 team or a 6-11 football organization because of the way they conduct themselves. The Browns are still too fresh. They had that good year last year, so it's hard for me to buy fully into them without just kind of giving some credence to their recent history. I do have to keep that in mind. There's still some question marks with Baker Mayfield. The Ravens, they are a well-run machine. I think Lamar Jackson's always going to keep them viable in games, give them a chance to win games. And I think that the record at the end of the year is always going to be, as long as they got that combination of players, coaches, I think they'll always be a playoff team. It just for them, the question mark, can they take that next step, get over that hump? I think what a lot of Steelers fans are really worried about is, do we have the worst quarterback in the division now with Joe Burrow, with Baker Mayfield, with Lamar Jackson, this youth movement going on? And I do think that is one of the biggest concerns that someone like yourself is experiencing here. But I think, the fact that Ben took this offseason seriously, I think it's a good thing. I think that it's good for the organization because you look at a guy like Tom Brady, one of his big things is pliability, being flexible. I don't know if you necessarily need to be that big physical quarterback that Ben was back in the day, because defenders can't be as rough for quarterbacks anymore. I think that is to his advantage. Yes, when you scramble outside the pockets, it's anyone's game. You're subject to any punishment you face when you escape that pocket. But as long as he stays in there, completes those short 10-yard routes, those check downs, those slants that they were doing last year, and they could balance it out with a good running game and Najee Harris this year, who knows what's going to happen with the line. But I feel as though the Steelers coaching staff is good at coaching up offensive line, because all these guys too, they didn't start off from a place of strength. Villanueva was another loss too on the offensive line this year as well. They were coached up. They were homegrown products. So I think that coaching staff can make them. So I'm giving you a little bit of optimism here, basically, Dre. I think that your team is still going to be a playoff team, especially with the 17 playoff format. You're right. I don't look at them as a Super Bowl team, but that's more so because the Kansas City Chiefs exist. And it's hard for me to look at any team as a Super Bowl favorite coming out of the AFC, as long as the Kansas City Chiefs are there, as long as that quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is still swinging the rock for them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think we'll make the playoffs, even with our division getting tougher. So our division might be the toughest in the AFC. I know there's that West is pretty tough still. I think, like I said, I think we're just going to make the playoffs. And if we make it to, the AFC finals and the AFC championship, I'm satisfied with that. I don't think that we're going to be Super Bowl contenders. And, Juju, you talk about the youth movement that's going on, in our division. And I think that's a big factor, is what is going to be our answer to once Big Ben leaves.
Dwayne Haskins.
We haven't been able to find that answer. I don't think Dwayne Haskins is it.
Didn't he get arrested or something too?
Yeah, it's been awful.
No, it was, he got assaulted by his wife.
Baby mama or whatever. His wife, yeah.
Rough incident. Not a great week for a Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback there.
No, I mean, and that's the thing, is we've tried so many times to find an answer for what do we do life after Big Ben, and we just haven't been able to find that, and it's unfortunate. And granted, we've also been drafting quarterbacks later in the draft, or we're trying to pick up people's seconds, right, like a Dwayne Haskins, and so maybe we have to bite the bullet, and if we get a good enough draft pick, maybe we take a first round quarterback or something. But that's the other thing that's difficult, is we're never going to be at the top of the first round either, because we perennially, like I said, make the playoffs. And I'll take that over perennial losers any day of the week. Trust me. But yeah, we're sort of just stuck in this limbo where I don't know if we'll ever get a good enough talent at quarterback to replace Big Ben, just because we consistently win. But that means we'll also never win the championship. And that's okay, though. Like, there's only one champion per year anyways. So I'll take it.
You have such a way of looking at life, Dre, that it's so even killed. But I think that's also saying you have seen your Steelers win 2 Super Bowls in your lifetime. I've seen my Niners lose 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime. So you can afford to be a little bit, if they win, they're fine. It's like one champion each year. But I'm just internally burning inside. I'm just thinking, on the 6-yard line against the Ravens, up 20-10 with 7 minutes to go. Dre's over here talking about, you lose the Super Bowl, whatever, it's no big deal. What, Dre, I'm hurt now. I think thanks, Dre. You have to end this podcast on such a negative note. God,
I'm sorry, dude. This is what privilege is like. This is sports privilege at its finest.
Sports privilege. You have the Lakers, you have the Steelers. Here, you don't even have. Well, at least you took a concession on your baseball team by picking the Angels and not the Dodgers. So at least you said, exactly. You know what, I'm going to handicap myself a little bit here and take the most mediocre baseball team I possibly could. So
see, you can't say that I'm a bandwagon fan with that one. I certainly
can. But Anyway, Dre, it was good having you on, man. But thank you for swinging by. Before this was just the Slumpbuster. It was the Slumpbuster with Ju-Ju and Dre. And you were as big a part of making this thing a thing as possible. So whatever you're working on, obviously you're working on getting married. So congratulations to you. Congratulations on your nice, beautiful house. If I'm ever in Albuquerque, we're going to do some live recordings. If there's a big UFC fight, that's going to happen. Closing thoughts? Big 100?
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you again, Ju-Ju, for inviting me back onto the pod. And so, and everybody else at the Slumpbuster. So we've got so many guys that have made it successful, and it is what it is. And we've gotten, sponsorships, and we've met some really cool people that we got to talk to. And so I've just appreciated still being a part of the journey of the Slumpbuster, and I'm excited for where it's going. So best of luck to you, Ju-Ju. And to all of our listeners, as always, thank you. We appreciate you.
All right, guys. Well, you're listening. Did 100 episodes. We got 100 more coming and 1,000 more coming. And we want you to be a part of that ride. So you got to hit that subscribe button. You got to leave that 5-star review on iTunes. Leave a like on this video if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Tell us some of the good things we are doing, some of the things we could be doing better. Let us know in the comments below. Check out our partner, cavemancoffeeco.com. Come on, don't be a chump. Use promo code SLUMP and save on your next purchase a delicious cold brew coffee from cavemancoffeeco.com. Promo code SLUMP. Guys, I need you to stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you on episode 101.